believe we have a question from the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute.
Hello, my name is Jonna Plump, and I'm representing the Legacy Youth Leadership Program at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. Given the legacy of the Freedom Rides, we now understand the importance of taking a stand for civil and human rights. However, when we observe events like the protests in Egypt, it is apparent that the nature of activism has evolved. What do you think is the cause for this transformation, and what methods of activism do you foresee in the future?
Very interesting question about the evolution of activism. I wonder, Stanley, if you might want to start us off at least, and maybe others may want to join in, but I know in conversations with you, you've often talked about your filmmaking as a way of making moral statements, of making a difference in the world. And I sort of see that this wonderful film that you've made as part of the legacy of the Freedom Rides, a continuation of the rides. And I wonder if you might talk about how you see your own contributions or your sense of things in terms of this question about the evolution of activism.
Sure.
Ray, would you just repeat your question, please?
The question has to do with looking at what's happening in the streets of Cairo right now. We're all sort of fixed, I think, a bit on the potential there and what's happening, what's not happening, and it's I think, quite understandable to try to connect it to historical events and to such things as the Freedom Rides, to the freedom struggle, to movements for social justice, and it suggests that maybe there's a kind of evolution, that maybe what we're seeing may be something new, maybe something old, and I wonder if Stanley might start us off and maybe others can jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a connection to what's happening in Egypt and to the Freedom Rides. I mean, it's definitely made me think about it. We are much more connected, obviously, than we were back then. You know, we have internet, blogs, so many different ways of being connected, and information travels so much faster. One of the things that was surprising when we were making the film was that for the first almost 2 weeks of the Freedom Rides, there was no news coming out. You know, not until the bus was bombed did suddenly there was an interest in the Freedom Rides, and suddenly the media covered it. The black press was there, but they were weekly presses, so there just wasn't that much coverage of it. You know, now we're seeing what's happening in Egypt almost the moment it's happening. But I think it's still the same thing. It's still, you know, people rising up and taking a stand and wanting to make change. And it happens so fast. You know, I was thinking, as people here were talking, I was thinking about how the Freedom Riders affected my life. You know, that I'm just a little bit younger than they are. I was about 10 years old when it happened. But in that 10 years, the whole world changed. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here as an African-American filmmaker if it wasn't for the steps that these people here took. So, you know, change happens really quickly. And as Diane was saying about the war, the Vietnam War, it happened quickly. You know, people, at first it was like, you'll never change this. This war will never stop. And then it did. You know, we're seeing in Egypt, one day Egypt is one thing, the next day it's another. So I think, you know, when people want to make change, when people make a stand, things can happen very, very quickly.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Yes.
When you travel around the world, it could be in Africa, Asia, Europe, Central, South America, people know the story of the civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. There's one report coming out that more than 250,000 copies of the Montgomery story, the FOR, the Fellowship of Reconciliation, did it in comic strip. Mm-hmm. That were distributed in Egypt, primarily in Cairo, in 08, 09, and some last year. When you go to Germany, go to South Africa, any place, the people talk about the civil rights movement. We read the literature, we watched the films, we know all about Dr. King. So we live in one world. The world is small. We didn't have a website. We never heard of the internet.
No email.
We didn't have an email. And I don't know if we had all these things, what we would have been able to do. So you're so right. People come to that point where they're tired, they're fed up, and they're saying we cannot and will not take it anymore. I watched the drama in the street of Cairo. For me, it is very inspiring. And I think it was spread to the other parts of the Middle East, into Africa, and other places where people have been held down.
We have more activism, more concern for the quality of life for the human race than I've ever known to exist in my own years of life, my 8 decades now of life. More activism in the sense of recognizing more of the dots that have to be connected among us human beings, among various peoples, religions and races and whatnot. There are 2 missing quotas, two missing equations maybe. The first one is that the recognition of nonviolence as personal power and social political power is missing. Most of the books I've read about the civil rights movement thus far do not give any serious treatment to nonviolence.
Spirituality.
Yeah.
There's some exceptions, I hope.
Well, I haven't gotten that section of your book yet. Really. Maybe, yeah, and I'll be more careful to be looking for it as I continue. I'm not finished it yet, but I'm reading it, and it is a very significant piece of work. But by and large, the civil rights movement, the phrase civil rights, has glossed over personal power, personal responsibility to link up with other people and to make change. The second equation that I want to put on the table here is that the Freedom Ride is a good example of it. We had to literally force the Democratic administration at that time to see what we were doing as a serious dysfunctionality of American society, that governments should take a role in playing. They did not want to do it, did not want to see that as a function of government. Ross Barnett of Mississippi and John Patterson in Alabama said that government can allow hostility to be a dominant element of the society, can allow segregation to be constitutional by their state governments. We today have, I think, in large measure, federal government that really does not support the human rights of all human beings everywhere in the world. The issue in Cairo is in part also our policies of 60 years towards the Middle East, our economic policies, our political policies. So the big question is, can structures for freedom, justice, liberty for all, equality for all in Cairo emerge out of those streets, out of that movement? Will there be sufficient numbers of people of all stripes in Egypt who will see it to their advantage to allow this to mean we will strengthen our families, we will improve our neighborhoods, we will increase government as a responsible vehicle for the well-being of the people of Egypt? That's the big issue. Are there forces in the world, governmental forces in the world, who will support the people in developing that kind of a process in Egypt? It would be the first time it's ever happened in the Middle East or in Egypt. So that those two issues, it seems to me, are important. I urge you who are the young people, nonviolence as an option to war, to violence, to hatred, to responding to wrong with another wrong, to pursuing a life's course that is rooted in the very best that you are, namely the fact that you are a gift of creation, a gift of God, a gift of life. There's nothing comparable to it. And your use of it can make all the difference to who you are and what you are, and then to how you will respond politically and socially.